Hello to everyone watching on YouTube and listening on Spotify. It's another episode of NRG Insights. For those who don't know, we get people on, influential people in the market of specialist lending, resi, broking, and any kind of ancillary products into the financial services market. At the moment, we're doing a sales leadership series, which I think has really hit been very interesting for a lot of people. I think it's really kind of relevant. On that note, I've got Adam Butler, who's the sales and marketing director of Avamore, with me. Thanks for joining me, Adam.
Thanks for having me on, Marcus.
So if you can just talk to me about the kind of the journey that you've taken up to where you are now, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I think probably like a lot of people, I suppose my age is I didn't grow up wanting to necessarily work in sales and finance,
Do
but
you know what everyone
once
starts with that? Everyone goes fell into it.
it depends how long you can stick out wanting to be a professional footballer. I guess I found that pretty young age that was never going to be the case, to be honest with you. So yeah, to be honest, it's kind of fell into it a little bit. Did a year at uni, just wasn't really for me. Wanted to get out and work, to be honest with you. And parents had worked in finance. I think again, like most children, think well, if they can do it, I can do it too. And started working at a local IFA's firm on the sort of mortgage side, getting the CMAP, and then sort of really focusing on the resi buy to let market as a broker for a number of years. That was kind of the sort of '09, '10 time, so quite a tough time in that
Tough gig,
market.
yeah.
A lot of regulation changes and things.
You
So
look good for it,
and then
mate. You don't look like you went through 09, 010. You do, it's
oh,
all right.
appreciate it must be a
This was
filter
08,
on.
by the way. This was different.
Oh, I tried that once younger, at a younger age, to be fair. It didn't suit me, so you pull it off far better. And then, yeah, I think I've been doing that for a number of years. Sort of went self-employed as a broker for a couple of years again, was sort of good years, bad years. And then actually a recruiter reached out to me and said, have you ever thought about working for lenders? The opportunity was actually with Vida Home Loans,
Yeah.
just when they were sort of in their infancy, starting up, and it's quite local to me, and actually thought, the opportunity to see it from the other side, I guess, as the dark side, I guess, as brokers often tell me now.
Yeah.
And yeah, just
It
didn't
depends
really
on what
look
side
back.
of the fence you're on, and so whether it's the dark or the bright side, doesn't it?
But, but yeah, I was going to say the other side's always the dark side, I guess, isn't it? But yeah, no, it was really interesting time actually. Something a bit more specialist to what I'd been doing as a broker, and that just kind of started my journey on specialist lending. Spent a few years at Vida. And then got approached and went to Hampton Trust again, a bit more into, we were still doing term loans, but bridging as well. And then, yeah, again, a few years there. The opportunity to join Avamore arose. Very different outfit, going from a challenger bank to not quite a startup, but I think it was sort of 12 people at Avamore. I've already done it there, and I've done Avamore and Avamore at
Even
the
more, you've
same
already mixed it up, yeah.
time.
Return of
But
question.
yeah,
What's the name of it?
that's it. Yeah, yeah. As I said earlier, you can call me whatever you like. So yeah, and yeah, no, I think that it was an opportunity to again learn something new, go into development, join a smaller company, and actually I think I met Michael and Zaire, the founders, and two individuals I thought, hey, I could learn a lot from, learn something new, and I think that's something I've always pushed myself throughout my career is. I'm always keen to learn something new, push myself, not sort of get too settled and comfortable. Albeit that was sort of December 2019, January 2020. Those conversations I had, little did I know what was around the corner. A few nervous conversations around March time, to be fair, and
Yeah.
actually we didn't furlough anyone. We still worked right throughout, and I think as a salesperson, it was probably a bit of a nerve wracking time. There wasn't a lot to be done business wise out
Difficult
there,
one,
and
especially in dev, because the site's shut. So and there's still money out there, isn't there? I suppose you spend a lot of your time kind of trying to tell people it's going to be all right.
yeah, and I think like as a salesman, you join a company, you want to hit the ground running, you want to be like, I'm going to show you why you hired me, I'm going to bring in a load of deals and do that, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
almost impossible to do that. I think actually, if I look back in hindsight, that sort of 6 to 9 months where it was very very quiet gave me the opportunity to really build on new relationships, solidify relationships I had. I think a lot of my broker relationships from the sort of term side, some moved across the development side, but actually had to build quite a lot of new relationships with different clients. So I think in hindsight, actually having that time and that sort of patience from leadership to give me that opportunity, I think was what really stood me in good stead. So yeah, that was what 5 and a bit years ago, and I think as I say, I think the culture and things we've created here at Avamore is what's kept me here.
Nice. And so talk to me about that transition from salesperson to leadership. How did that come about, and how have you found the kind of the pros and cons of it?
Yeah, I think it was again, it was probably part of my thought process in joining a smaller company, that opportunity to get on the ladder early and be part of its growth. At the time, Avamore didn't have any sort of head of sales or anything in that position, so you immediately sort of saw there was an opportunity. I think that firstly it was kind of knuckle down for the first 2 years and prove your worth, and then the opportunity. I think a term we've always used here, and actually I still say to my guys now, actually, is do the role before you get the job. I
Amen.
think that was something that was said to me.
Yeah. I
Um,
always liken it to um, it just making the decision easier for someone.
yeah,
I've done the same thing very, very recently here. I don't think I can even announce that yet, but there's a similar thing. Even our ops manager did the same thing. She wrote me a job spec for an ops manager. She's my admin. She wrote a job spec for an ops manager and said, "These are all the things I already do. This is what you need. Ideal candidate, me." And I thought, you know what? You've made my decision really easy because you're already doing it. It does make a massive difference, doesn't it?
oh, and when you actually start actually officially doing the job, everyone kind of goes, "Oh, I thought they were already doing that anyway."
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think,
Do you know that's mostly when you see the promotions on LinkedIn, you go, sort of thought they were that anyway.
yeah, I thought we'd been doing that for the last 6 months. So, and I think when you've never, it's easier for someone who's been a manager who's hired in as a manager, but when you've never done that role before, I think it then gives the confidence in not only the team you're managing, but the wider company. I think you look and go, oh yeah, he's proved his worth, I
Done
guess,
it,
to a
yeah, yeah.
degree in that role. He's done it. He's proved himself. So, I think that was really my sort of focus. I think it's to say
What
the
the
transition.
Sorry, okay, carry on.
I was just going to say the trust is very different. To be honest, I think you don't fully realise that until you go into it. I'm sure it's the same for most jobs, but I think sales, especially compared to managing, is completely different, right? You
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to have a different
We
mindset.
tend to have this thing of the best salespeople become managers, and I think it's back to front in our industry. A lot of industries as well, same as recruitment, where just because you're already good business, right, it doesn't particularly mean you want to manage, and especially in a sales environment, right? Because you've gone from me to we. Um, how was that transition as well? Because obviously you're managing people that you worked alongside. How did that? Like, were there pitfalls to that, or was it positive? How was it?
Yeah, I think that there's certain challenges. I think, to be honest with you, there's always everyone's going to take it in a slightly different vein. I think, as I say, the work I'd done before, it was sort of formalised. I often, I guess, looked at it as more of a sort of mentor role a little bit. That new joiners into the sales team. Actually, I'd make sure that I was their kind of informal go-to for questions, for advice, and help and things like that as well. I think I'd already got involved in a bit of more management in terms of product innovation and sort of operational improvements and things like that. So I think it's certainly not without its issues here and there, but I think in the main it was okay. It was more myself, I think, and to your point, I think that's exactly. I think sales especially is rarely actually does the best salesperson
No,
make
no,
the
but it's
best
not
manager.
caring about. It's not fair to say salespeople are selfish, but you know what I mean. It's very your KPIs, and it's about you. It's a bit of an ego-driven job. So to go from that, and this is why we started this leadership sessions kind of podcast because it's quite a regular conversation. That it's a tough gig to move over, right? It's two very different skill sets, but and I do think there's that management maybe gap we have because not all the best salespeople make the best management. And also, if you're not the best salesperson, but you've got the aspirations to be a good manager, it's difficult to then hone the respect of sales guys because they only see numbers. Do you know what I mean? It's a tough one to overcome.
Yeah, and as a business, how can you necessarily promote someone who's not top of the tree?
Yes.
That's the sort of it actually becomes a very sort of small funnel of people who tick all the boxes. But for me, as I say, the point being is it's not selfish, but it's very tunnel vision, right?
Yeah.
It's my KPIs, it's my business. I often say to my team, look at your KPIs as your business versus our business. I think I was always probably better than some at the EQ side of things.
Yeah.
Actually, whether it be when I was a team manager, in sort of previous jobs, or actually look back to being a team captain of my football team when I was a kid, sort of thing. Actually, I always quite enjoyed
Yeah.
actually, seeing success in others as much as my own success. To be honest with you, and I think that's
Do you
probably
think
what
there
led
are
me.
those traits? Do you think you see those traits in people now? Because I genuinely do. I think you see people go, you are a future leader because you care. Do you know what I mean? You like seeing success. I think it's a great trait in leaders.
Yeah, I think it's something very difficult to train in someone. I think you probably either have it a bit, you can add to it and you can tweak it a bit, but I think you either have that sort of base level of, more interest in others and actually see success in others over just yourself, to be honest with you. And I think that's often the big part of where salespeople go into management. Actually, they either make, I don't think there's many that probably make an average manager. They're either fantastic because they've got
Yeah, I
really
think
great
don't.
people skills, because that's why they were successful as salespeople. They were able to identify a client and say that, how am I going to pitch this person? I can understand what motivates them. I can understand what drives them. Versus, I guess, if you don't have that, then sometimes you're do as I say, not as I do sort of manager. So I think quite often you're one end of the scale or the other often if you're sales into management rather than sort of an average manager.
So talk to me about this because I'll tell you what, I've had two people on. One that's come from sales, running a sales team, and one really good. Abby was on last week. And she wasn't. She was from a process-driven background in underwriting admin, and she runs a sales team. So I was always kind of under the impression that like do as I do type, but she kind of changed my thinking on that last week because it's not. It's very well. There's kind of lots of different questions to it, but how do you think it's important to have come from that background? Number one, and number two, if you don't, how do you go about kind of managing a team where they are so sales focused? And maybe if you haven't, I know you come from that background, so it's probably a difficult one for you to answer. But
Yeah, I'm probably slightly biased to be fair and say
yeah,
that I
yeah,
probably would. I think that I can actually see both sides of the thing. I think that the ideal scenario is that you look up to someone because they've done it. So when they tell you this is what you need to do or this is how you improve, you can go on and say, well, it comes from experience. They've done it before. They've been successful. The argument to that, I guess, is that actually if I look at my team now, they weren't with us when I was actually in RM. So although they can look at my CV or look at my history and say, okay, he did it, they never saw me do it. So
yeah,
actually,
yeah.
as I say that maybe it isn't
Yeah,
necessarily that
they've
you
known you
have
as
to
a
come
manager,
from
haven't
the
they?
top.
So
Yeah, I think you have to understand the pitfalls, the stresses of a sales job. If you're not from a sales job before, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but you have to understand the added pressure that, you could have a record breaking month, quarter, and then have a really difficult one, and all of a sudden the pressure's straight on you.
yeah, yeah.
That
Well, kind of
constant
that
pressure.
was Abby's point last week that to kind of shift my thinking on it because she just said that I just had an incredible desire to learn exactly what they did. And I think once you've got that, and then you can be a good manager. Um, I think you can come from it, but it's just an interesting one because obviously most of us will say you've got to come from sales to manage a sales team, but it's an interesting concept the other side.
I think the other argument as well is I think sales certainly in our sector is changing. If I look
Mm.
back to 10, 15 years ago when I first started in the industry,
Yeah, bang, bang, bang,
what a
bang.
salesperson did was you go out, here's my rate cards, you take them out, it was that sort of standard sales role. I think brokers clients now it's so busy that we had this lockdown where you couldn't meet in person. I think the roles change a bit more and knowledge, that sort of credit acumen as well as sort of sales skills I think is equally important. And therefore actually if you had a manager who didn't have a sales background but had a strong credit or processing background,
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
they could add value to a salesperson who
hundred
maybe
percent.
hasn't had it before. So I think they could still add that. I think there's still value with that.
Do you know what? Funny enough, I was talking to some brokers yesterday. I was out in the city, and that was their kind of comment that how BDMs have changed over the last few years. Especially, I mean, brokers are more educated now. It's not a few because it used to be there was a few commercial brokers, and everyone else sort of played at it. The education piece has improved, which is down to the lenders as well. Um, the but they don't buy into the BDM who's the donut deliverer anymore. They buy into the guy who understands the technical side, and especially in dev, they just want stuff done. Um, so it has moved. You're right. We're still in relationship management. That is still the crux of our business. But I feel like brokers can sniff out in a minute, and you probably won't get another call from him if you haven't got the backup as well. If you're just nice.
Yeah, I think that there's the old school way of just throw everything, be yes man was
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah. That looks good. Turn it down on the right. Never going to go through. Like it just doesn't work, does it?
you can't be like that. And I think you've got to be honest. I think I say to my team now, what do we sell? We don't actually sell the product. We sell trust. And the way you build trust is exactly that. Is when I say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. And I understand whether that be a yes, no, what leverage you're going to offer, what pricing, whatever it may be, that you can build that. So I think actually having someone from that background who can add that sort of credit, which exactly how I've kind of built the team now is that I very much like we rarely in the last probably 3 years haven't actually hired someone straight into what I call an external BDM
Yeah,
RM's
you've
role.
got. We'll talk about that actually, but you've got a good system there, haven't you? That's kind of that's wielded some decent, really, really good people going through that analyst, external type positioning.
Yeah,
When the guys did that? Was that like their focus, or was it just like it was money saving, but actually it transpired to be well, or was that always going to be um, their model?
I think that the team that I guess I inherited was actually a really experienced team. We'd grown the sales team. We were in that point of, growing the business, adding across all the departments, to be fair. And I think sometimes, as I say, we're all really experienced, good people, but you have to almost retrain. Every lender works in a slightly different way, asks a different thing of everyone. Salespeople are no different.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, I think if you get someone in junior who's either not done it before, they're still very much on that first step of their career, you can mould them into the way you want them to work, and very much add that credit acumen. You spend a year, 2 years internally in the office, you understand, you've worked on deals, so that when you go out, you stand out, I think, is the way to do it. So it's the two reasons.
I think it's the same if someone's started off in admin and they become a broker. They just understand the pitfalls. They understand the whole. It's a journey of it, isn't it? Because if you only do your one bit, you never really understand what happens in underwriting, or you never really understand where they make the decisions. They're just yes and no's. I think once you've got the whole journey, you can have a proper view of a deal. I liken it to brokers as well. I say, like, we always think our job's the hardest, don't we? And everyone else's bit is relatively easy. Once you understand the journey, you appreciate more the other aspects of getting a deal through.
Yeah, and I think that works both ways. You've seen maybe in the early years, in the sort of height of COVID, you saw some people go from lending into broking and vice versa. And actually, I think it works well there because you can say to people, "I've seen it from your side. I've been your side of the desk, so to speak. I understand what you're going through, and therefore I know what you need from me." So I think putting yourself, that's again, that's sales in a nutshell, isn't it? Putting yourself in your client's shoes to know what they need from you.
I think, I've had some good success with putting like analyst types into like dev brokers, for instance, because you can teach people other products, but actually the authority you have when you understand a deal is on both sides, whether that's BDMs or brokers, is it's kind of the decision maker, isn't it? It's the bit that it's the trust. If I trust what you're saying, I'm going to use you, because actually it's not everyone knows that. I don't need to talk about this in the podcast, but it's not everyone knows it's not pounds and pence. It's the deliverability and the trust you've got in a minute.
100%, yeah, and I think that's and what we talked about, the old school sort of BD work. You can still do that, right? You can still do the donuts, you still do the lunches and that sort of stuff. But actually, if you don't come firstly with that sort of knowledge, that experience point, then actually it's very difficult, I think, to get through. So I think that's certainly probably not just COVID, but I think that's really changed. We talk about now when we're hosting events or arranging things. Actually, it's more difficult, I think, than it ever has been to actually get people to attend events.
Turn up at the same time. Unless it's golf. For some reason, everyone turns up to golf.
It's that time of the year, isn't it? The sun's out, to be fair. We've got a 6-month window where everyone wants to play golf. So yeah, I think that's the market has changed. And like you say, a lot more people are coming into the specialist market now. Yeah. It benefits to it's my trajectory in my career. I started very residential, progressed through.
Yeah.
I find it's more interesting. I think sometimes you can add more value. There's more solutions to be had, which again is why I think salespeople need to have that credit, knowledge. Because so we're gonna hit a road bump along the way. I need to understand how I can get over that and get the deal to the finish line.
Yeah, that's right, and it's not the easy wins. It's not the yeses. It's the no's and how you deal with it as well, right? Because if you haven't got the technical knowledge, you're just going to be letting a lot of people down and not really understanding why.
And look, that's the hardest thing for any salesperson to do, right? Is to say no to a deal, but actually,
it's like turning something away. No one wants to turn away business, but you can't do everything. It's a tough one.
Yeah, and again, that's probably a good position. A smaller business like ourselves, you can be it's a bit easier to say, like, I don't have to do every deal you do. This is where I'm really good, and that's something you need to kind of instill in salespeople, because you hire a good salesperson, they've got that drive. I want to do everything. I want to do it, and that's great, and it's not knock that out of them, but refine it a bit. Again, if I look at the recruitment model that we have now, again, something that we've worked really well with is actually kind of former estate agents.
Yeah.
That's a tough sales job, right? If you can be successful in that and you can deal with some of the calls that you have to do and the abuse they probably take and still be successful.
They want to try recruitment, mate.
I was going to say that's no different, is it? To be honest with you, it's a tough gig. If you can be successful in that, what I call hard sales. Ours it's not easy, but it's a bit more sort of consultative, I think. There is a more relationship driven. I always say to those guys on the first day is, you'll never get someone who just hangs up on you. The worst thing you'll get is, I'm busy, call me back, sort of thing. So I think that's what you're then doing is refining their hard sales skills and making it, as I say, a bit more consultative, build the trust, be willing to say no and not cram a deal that is not really an Avamore deal in, and actually focus on the one that we can do and we can impress.
Less but better. Service things you can work on. So
yeah,
just going back to that kind of leadership aspect, Anna, because one of the big, not bugbears for me, one of the things I see is that we train people to the nth degree when they come into the industry. We train people up then to be BDMs or to be internal or to be analysts, to be underwriters, but then we just move leaders up. Um, we don't tend to have like formal leadership training. How have you developed your leadership skills and what, and not just not in your business, but as an industry? So what do you think we need to do to kind of to make it more accessible to people? Because people don't even know what they're good at it or not yet, right? Because we've never done it. So it's a tough. I think it's the only thing you go into where people go on, good luck. We don't no formality to it.
yeah. I think it's still of that mindset that if you did the job, you can manage that team, and
Mm.
actually, sort of what it's a completely different job. It's got completely different skill
Yeah, yeah.
set,
Even like your
different.
emotional intelligence stuff, like you said before, it's just completely different. It's not. It's so far from what you used to do. It,
Yeah.
it's a toughie. So sorry, I keep interrupting that. But yeah, what's the?
No,
I don't know what the answer is, but what do you think?
yeah, I was probably no different to be fair. I probably went in similar and thought, well, I've done the job. I've done the job before I got the role, sort of thing.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
should be okay. And then all of a sudden, I think you go in. I think training. I think not just jumping into it. I think, as I say, I was given that gradual sort of, be a mentor, get used to it. I think that helped.
yeah,
Actually, probably 12, 18 months after I'd started being a manager that actually we did some more formal sort of company management training, which was vital. I think actually having some structure to it, there's some brilliant companies out there, and whether that be external mentors that you have working with people on a one-on-one basis or
yeah,
actually some actual formal training, just the basics really. I think that was really useful, and I look back now and wish I'd had that before I went into it.
yeah. Do you
Because I
think that
think
should be a thing? Like I said, we really don't. I personally think we don't spend enough on it, or we don't give enough knowledge on it to go. Oh, that's a bit of me. You look at a management course and go, oh, I get that. Like I could do that. I would enjoy it, and I actually love helping people because we've moved people up the ladder. But management training is we don't know what we don't know. Like I ran a business for years, then I got a business coach and realised I wasn't really running the business. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You
yeah.
just it's we just but we chuck people in at the deep end. So there's no
And if you leave it too long, actually, it's a bit you mentioned about golf earlier. To be fair, it's a bit like golf, right? If you've never had lessons and you kind of self-taught, and then you have lessons, you spend half your time unlearning your bad
undoing those
habits,
habits. Yeah,
and actually, it's no different to management, really. Actually, you can pick up bad habits. I think the other thing I would say, I was very fortunate that I had Michael there in particular, the founders when I officially went, and then very quickly had Dimitri join, who was vital for me. I think to have someone above you who you can learn a lot from,
yeah,
look up to, who's very good at, giving you actually sort of feedback, I think is a really key thing. Actually asking for feedback from both people who report into you and people you report into. I think that's not an easy thing to do, but actually really important to help build.
have they always been really open with that? Like, what's the word? Positive criticism. Have they always been like? So I know obviously Dimitri was there, and I've always highlighted him as one of the top people managers. He's a very good,
Yeah.
um, how he looks after people. But has it always been quite good with like constructive criticism on your part? Have they always tried to help you in that way, or is it? Because sometimes that's hard to take, like you say, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that was probably the toughest thing of going to a manager. Actually, like I'm quite a positive person. I'm very much, I would say, I want to drive people forward with motivation. That's
Mm.
always been my mantra. Really, I think if you constantly use the stick, so to speak, you always will have to use that. I'm more of a carrot, and then when you do have to use the stick, it probably lands a little bit better. But yeah, I think that I've always taken that on board. I think partly, I said before, I've always been keen to learn, and I think if you assume you have all the answers and are almost arrogant to a degree that I know everything, I don't need to learn, then you
Yeah.
never will, to be honest. So I've always
Which
been
could be
open to
easily done
that.
as well, couldn't it? Because
Yeah.
you've done that job. You go, well, I did it. And I know I like to be managed, but obviously, we'll touch on that actually. How do you manage? Because so many different egos, personalities. In every sales team, everyone's a little bit different. How do you go about that management? Because you still have to kind of it's not one size fits all, but you still have to manage everyone in a relatively similar thing. But obviously, you've got so many. I say egos, but I mean that in the nicest way. Salespeople are driven like that. How do you go about managing that?
Yeah, I think again it comes back to sales really for me, is that I never had a one size fits all pitch, or the way I spoke to one client would be very different to the way I spoke to another client. I think that's been probably driven into me since I was a kid. Really, I kind of learned how to be in probably the class clown at a young age. To be fair, you need to understand what type of people were, and understand that. And I think that's the key bit, is if you just manage everyone the same way, Some it'll work well with, some it won't. I think you need to really understand what motivates them, what drives them, how do you get the best out of them. Some will need a bit more hand holding, some will actually really like waiting for them to come to you. So I think actually really understanding the people, what drives them is the first thing. But also, I guess, looking at yourself, and the biggest challenge I probably had when I went to being a manager was actually, I thought I needed to have all the answers, and be perfect,
Yeah.
and actually realise that if I'm not sure, I don't do it. You realise actually you've got to try things and learn from your mistakes and errors. I think that was my biggest challenge, was thinking I've got to go in and
You nail
every
it every
question
time.
my guys ask me, I've got to have the right answer. I've got them coming away going, wow, and actually they're more experienced at their job than you actually are at your new
Yeah,
job.
yeah, yeah.
Where I look at it, I think so. That was the biggest hurdle, getting over that, and then also I think you have to, whether you're head of a department, whether you're senior, whether you're at director level, CEO, whatever, you then have to broaden your management across all departments. I think
Yeah.
that's really important. You're not just managing sales, so you have to really grow your knowledge of the underwriting, the operational side of the business, and that's where I think the true leadership comes into the role. To be honest.
Nice. And you mentioned, you touched on mentorship. I mean, how important has that been for you in your career, and how has that kind of how have you adopted it in yours when it becomes to becoming a mentor? How has that been in your career?
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate. I've worked for quite a few really good people, and I think it's about, you don't want to just copy and paste what someone else does. I think you've got to be your own person, but I think it's about picking up little bits and pieces from other people,
Yeah.
and kind of adding that
Works the
to
other way
your.
as well, doesn't it? Working for a bad boss teaches you what not to do.
I was just going to say exactly that. That actually
Oh,
you learn
sorry.
almost. It's the same as your mistakes as well, right? I always say you learn more from what you do wrong than what you do right.
Yeah,
Same
yeah.
as that. It's, you learn actually, you go, but also actually, do you know what? In hindsight, I've had scenarios with what I call, bad bosses, so to speak. I've gone, I'd never do that because it didn't work for me, but actually,
Yeah.
it might work for someone else. And I think that sort of, understanding that just because it didn't work for me when they were managing me doesn't
Yeah.
mean that tactic,
That's a
that
really
what
good
they
point, because you could
did.
look at it one way, couldn't you, and go, yeah, bad manager, but actually they just didn't know how to manage different people. So, like you say, it didn't work for you. But
It
again,
didn't
that's a
work for
that's a
me.
learning thing, isn't it? Just learning how to, just because you don't react to something very well doesn't mean someone else isn't going to.
Yeah, and I think that look, that's the thing. I've been doing management roles at Avamore now for 3.5 years. I'm still learning every day. There's still tons that I need to add to my repertoire and learn from other people. I think, as I say, my mindset with anything with my career has always been, the day I don't feel like I can learn anything else will be the day I'll probably retire. To be honest with you, you've
Yeah.
always got to be willing
Do
to.
you know what? It's a common trait of good leaders as well. Always being aware of the stuff they're not good at.
I
I
think
think
that,
whenever time I speak to someone on here, it's the constant. The great people who keep progressing know that they need to learn more, because when no one's finished article.
it's that sort of fine balance between sort of confidence and humility a bit. Is that actually, I think I read once that, a good boss shouldn't always be the smartest person in the room. You hire smart people and let them tell you what to do, and all
Yeah,
you
yeah,
need to do is lead them, give them the tools and the environment and the confidence to do their jobs really well. And I think, as I say, I've worked for some really good people who I think were very, very good at that. That actually they undersell themselves a little bit actually, and how much, just because they might not do the doing themselves, they have a team, and the way they look after that team below them drives them up really. I think that's the key,
yeah,
and again, when I went to manage it, it's taking that step back from actually doing the actual job,
yeah,
and having confidence of going, right, do you know what, I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to let you potentially fail at that, and then we can have that conversation about how we can work from there, rather than going, do you know what, they don't know how to do it, I'll just do it. That
yeah, yeah. Do you know
certainly
what?
for
I'm
me.
all for that, and I have this conversation here all the time. Coaching over managing, because we're in a very busy business and there's not loads of us. And I know if someone asks me something, I can answer it and do it in 2 minutes. But actually, you're probably making it harder on them progression wise for their career, because you're not giving them the chance to do it themselves.
Yeah, it's sort of short-term pain for long-term gain, right? It might be
Yeah,
quicker if you just do it yourself the first time, but you'll
and you're
always
not
have.
doing it to stunt someone's career as well, right?
Yeah,
It's the right thing to do at that time. But I'm self-aware of that you go, if this doesn't help anyone if you just pick it up.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's, and look, there's a word there, patience, which certainly salespeople don't often have a huge amount of, and that's something I'm still striving to improve on, probably, to be honest with you. But I think that's the key bit, is you have to look. Salespeople, again, I think very good at looking at short term. Like, what am I going to do today? what deals am I going to complete today, this week, sort of thing. But
Yeah.
actually, management, you have to also look at that, but you also have to have a longer term picture. Certainly,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you're
How does it look long
training
term?
or mentoring people, is little things like that. Actually, what am I going to do with them to get an improvement out of them to see them tomorrow? But also, when do I get them to that point where, as I said before, with our progression, take that RM who's never worked in property finance before to 18 months, be ready to go out there and pitch to clients and bring in business, sort of thing. So that it comes with time, to be fair, and it's definitely still working on patience, that's for sure.
At least you're aware of it. Like I
Yeah.
said, self-awareness is the most important thing. That's really useful, mate. I appreciate that. So I'm asking everyone this at the kind of the end, and we've touched on it so many times, we'll probably repeat ourselves, but if you are speaking to someone now and you've got one bit of advice where they're looking at going into management from sales, what can you recommend to them, do you think is the game changer when it comes from to taking that step up?
I think certainly the training side, if the training is not in place beforehand, do something yourself. I think that, again, that's something I look back on and think I probably should have done something myself, and I do now. I think your sort of self improvement, self growth. I think outside of work, actually, I think that's really important to prepare yourself. Going with an open mind, as I say, I think bit understanding that actually it is a really different job, and importantly, probably look at the structure of where you're going to go and do it. You might be in a position of sales, and again, that's where the funnel, right, management gets really super thin. You've got a team of 20 salespeople that manage by one person, so you might not necessarily stay within the firm you're at. Make sure that the structure and the people, I think I mentioned, and I think a lot of people who joined Avamore when I did, the reason we joined was the leaders, the founders of the business. I
Yeah,
think you want to work for the right people who are going to help grow you, are going to be there to actually learn from, but going to give you that environment for yourself to grow. I think that's the huge thing. It might just be the opportunity to be a manager, but is it the right place that's going to help you really flourish in the role?
amazing. Do you know what? That's a really poignant point. We were talking about this week with someone about working for the person, not the company. Like
Yeah,
find the
absolutely.
person that's going to help you grow in your career and you're going to have value to the business. It's not the business is kind of irrelevant if the person that you're learning off isn't going to help you in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's I often find when I interview people now, I'm almost selling Avamore rather than interviewing them. To be fair, because I love that culture, and that was
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was it from day one. To be honest with you, was the people. I still love the team we have now, and I think that was driven right from day one. To be honest, so you like what you do and where you do it. The rest comes easy, right?
amazing, amazing. Thank you, man. Thank you for your time. I know we've gone through some really important stuff, so hopefully that gives some people some good insights. But especially like you said, coming from broking to lending, then moving into that sales direct or that sales management leadership roles is an arduous task. I think people have to think about it carefully, and hopefully these sort of conversations will really help. Obviously, all your socials will be on our socials, Adam. But if anyone
Yeah.
wants to get hold of you, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Best with me, I'm still old school. Be pick up the phone, give me a call, on mobile
Don't put
or
your
email.
don't shout your mobile number out. This is on Spotify. You
Yeah.
get 400 weirdos.
Oh,
But
right,
we,
yeah.
yeah, but no, we'll put all your socials on ours, and if anyone wants to get in contact with you, I'm sure they're welcome to, right?
No, absolutely no, and I really appreciate having me on. It's been a really good chat.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you, everyone listening. Thank you, everyone watching, and cheers for your time again, Adam. It's been really good.
Cheers, Marcus.
Cheers, mate.